Nutrition is directly linked to intuition. And the more you dial in on your nutrition and the input, the closer you get to God, the clearer everything else becomes, the more you trust yourself, the process, the journey, like they're all intertwined. It's such a beautiful experience. Good morning, prosperity seekers. Good afternoon or good evening, depending on what time it is in your corner of this beautiful round world. Welcome to another episode of the Prosperity Approach. I'm your host, Allyson Chavez. Really excited to talk about our topic today. Now, I've been doing a series, as you know, about the different cornerstones of prosperity. So we have financial, we have health, we have our relationships, and we have spirituality. And I've been focused for the last several episodes really about our health. And specifically as it relates to us as women, our body image, our weight, how we feel about ourselves, our energy and vitality, and so forth. And wanted to share something that is really, really critical if you're not only going to release weight. I like to say release weight rather than lose weight. It just feels better to me. It's kind of just a shift in my languaging. But if we want to release weight and we want to keep the weight off, there are specific things that we must do. However, there are more important, critical ways that we must be. And I really wanted to talk about really the art of being and the art of identity as it relates to our health and to our body image. I remember when I was so fed up, like we've gotten there, right? Like I didn't like how I felt in my body. I didn't like how I felt in my clothes. I usually like to wear things that are nicely tailored to me. But as I was putting on more and more weight, my clothes were getting bigger and bigger, but they were getting like poofier and poofier as well. I was starting to hide. I realized when my family and I went to Hawaii in December of 2018, I was pretty heavy. I was probably, I was at least 40 pounds overweight at that point. And I look at some of the pictures we took, and when we were taking them all together as a family, I was always sucking it in, right? But I was finding myself trying to hide under, like behind my kids or like to the side. Like I was hiding and I was using my clothes to hide. They were getting baggier and baggier. It's kind of like I was wearing a tent. And I got to the point where I was fed up. I didn't like how I felt. I didn't like how I looked. I would look in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw anymore. I had a lot of negative self-talk going on. And I wanted different results. And I didn't just want different results. I mean, I'd wanted different results for years, but I was fed up enough that this was no longer tolerable to me. And I wanted to be differently in my approach to releasing the weight rather than just doing another diet. Because here was the deal. I'm good at diets. I'm good at discipline. I'm good at I can be really, really strict and really, really rigid with myself and make myself behave and obey myself for, a certain amount of time. But there reaches a point where it just is all a breaking point, and then I can't say no to anything. And so I'm a really great dieter, but I wasn't that great at maintaining, even though every time I declared it's going to be different this time, I'm going to sustain this lifestyle change, right? And it hadn't worked. And so I knew at that time, even though I hadn't really articulated the prosperity approach and I didn't have every piece of the formula in place at that time, I knew that I wanted to approach it differently. I wanted to have a different experience. And on a deeper level, I needed to be a different person. And even though I didn't realize it at the time, what it boils down to is identity. I needed to shift my identity. So what I had to realize too was I had to get into a whole lot of awareness of where I was. What am I thinking? What's going on right now? And you'll hear me say over and over and over again that I am about massive awareness with zero judgment. Massive awareness, but zero judgment. We've got to get a baseline of where we're at. We've got to know what we're working with. We got to know where we're starting. And so that was the first thing. Like I had to get on that scale and just write down that number. And like, that's where we were. I had to, get my measurements down, because what you track you'll get results with things that you track. What you track expands. Now, in relation to our weight, we don't want it expanding, we want it contracting. But if you will track it and you'll keep your eye on it, you'll get results faster and it will be easier to stay on track. But that is a little bit of a sidebar for that. I had to recognize where I was. I had to recognize the gap between where I was and where I wanted to be. And I had to acknowledge that change was necessary. Like no longer could I be irritated and upset that eating Costco-sized tubs of peanut M&Ms was not going to sustain my desire of weighing 125 pounds in this little 5'2" body. I had to acknowledge, like, there's a gap here, and I need to close the gap. And I had to acknowledge that something needed to change. Probably a lot of things needed to change. But here's the thing that needs to change. We talk about that gap. I help you close that gap between knowing and having. And when we're talking about our weight, we got to close the gap between where we are and where we want to be. And in order to close that gap, what needs to change more than anything, and first and foremost, is your identity. It's a shift in identity. So let me talk a little bit about that, especially in relation to like nutrition plans and exercise plans and all of that. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to have all of this activity now and all of these changes that are going on. And when we are closing that gap between where we're at and what our goal is, it's not just strategies, it's not just tactics, it's not just tools. It really is the being part of it, and the being part of it must come first. The strategies and the tactics and the tools are there to support, but they're not what's going to help you to maintain that change that you desire. They're there to support. The being and the identity is what is going to facilitate that change. All right. So we got to make that shift. So let's talk for a second about identity. And what do I mean about identity? We live in this time in the history of the world where a lot of people are in an identity crisis. We're identifying with things that don't support us in moving forward. We identify with unhealthy habits and thoughts and behaviors. And because we identify with that, or we resonate with that, like, oh yeah, I see that in me, I see that in me. Oh, that's me, that's me, that's me. Like we claim all of these things, and that's part of our identity. But we need to shift out of those things that aren't serving us and who we are and who we're showing up as. And we need to start identifying with those habits and those thoughts and those feelings and those behaviors that are going to support us in reaching the goal weight that we have, the size of pants that we want to wear, our level of energy, our level of vitality, all of those things, our level of health that we want. We have to start identifying with the people who do and think and behave in ways that support that kind of an experience in life. So in simpler terms, it's just a different version of you. So it's not that you have to suddenly become fill in the name of your favorite athlete / model / actress / who you think is a healthy person. You don't have to become them. We're up-leveling this version of you. You get to be a more whole, more complete, healthier version of you. And you've got to start shifting your identity as you go. Like we make these tweaks in our identity as we go. And let me tell you why we do this. If the person you are now had everything that you needed to be where you want to be, you'd have been there by now. If you knew how to do it, you would have already done it. And if you knew how to sustain it, you would have already sustained it. So this level of person that you're showing up as right now is not the person that's going to get the results that you want. Because if you were, you would have already gotten those results. All right. And so again, this is just shifting in how you resonate and what you resonate with and changing in who you identify as in your heart of hearts and what you connect yourself with. All right. Stay with me because this will become much more clear as we go. And it's a whole lot of fun. If you like the conversation here, come have a deeper one with me in my free online challenge. You'll get live coaching from me as you discover how to achieve success without struggle. For more information, go to prosperityapproach.com/challenge or stick around to the end of the episode. So the gap between the two is a shift in your identity. It's the way you think, it's your habits, and your skills. So 3 things that make up our identity: the way we think, our habits, and our skills. And the sum of the habits you have create the reality you are experiencing. All right, so habits are really important, but habits are just kind of outcroppings of thoughts and of who we're identifying with. So we got to go back to the beginning. We got to go back to the cause, and the cause is our identity. So we've got to evolve our current identity in order to get to the next step, to that next level of who we really want to be. There are 6 steps that we take as we are evolving that allow us to evolve and allow us to shift our identity. And the steps are very straightforward. They're very simple. They're very easy to implement, and they're critical because it's not just about I'm going to work out 6 days a week for an hour a day, and I'm going to be running a 10K within the next 2 weeks, even though I've been laying on the couch for the last 2 years, and I'm only going to eat raw, whole, organic foods. And it's not the doing part, because holy cow, we got to start where we're at, right? So we got to identify where we're at, and then how we're going to shift our identity as we go. So the first step in shifting your identity is knowing who the current version of you is. What do you do? How do you think in relation to your body? Are you filled with self-loathing? Are you filled with self-hatred? I know a lot of women who are, so it's really, really important that we start with that self-love. In fact, I remember when I was 45 pounds overweight, so I was about 165 pounds, 170 pounds. And I'm little, dear prosperity seekers. I'm 5'2". So people are always shocked when they meet me in person and I'm not wearing my big girl shoes, because they're like, you are so short. Yeah, powerful things come in small packages, people. But 165 on this tiny little frame is really quite puffy. It's really quite cushiony. And so I had just okay, well, that's where I am. But I had to think, all right, what were my thoughts? And my thoughts were not self-love. They were not supportive thoughts. And so I knew I needed to change that and start implementing some self-love. So I did it really, really simply. As I would take a shower and as I was lathering up different parts of my body, I would express love to different parts of my body. And I think I shared this with you on a previous podcast, but I just thanked my body. It was so amazing and so miraculous. And it was working for me so hard every day and showing up for me so well every day. And I was abusing it so terribly. So I would just start appreciating my body while I was in the shower and expressing love and appreciation for my arms and for my belly and for my boobs and for my butt and for every part of my body. And I just said, thank you. I love you. And I really, really appreciate you. And I really like the shape of you. I might not like the size right now, but I really like the shape, and it's a really beautiful shape. And so it was just really, really simple things that I did. But that was after I realized I was having some pretty cruel thoughts about myself. And so I started to shift a little bit in who I was identifying and how I was identifying with myself relative to my body. But I had to get clear on who I was. What was I eating? How much was I eating? How often was I eating? Was I moving? So I was having to do this intake of what the current version of me was. What was my thinking? What were my behaviors? What were my habits? And then the second step in shifting your identity is knowing what skills you're already bringing to the table. This is not my first rodeo. I am sure that if you're listening to this podcast, talking about releasing weight is not the first time you have ever heard of it or tried it yourself. It's not your first rodeo either. And so we have some skills we can bring to the table. All right, I know how to eat healthy. I've read a ton of books on that. I've done different programs. I've done different exercise things. I know what I prefer, what I don't like. So what skills are you bringing to the table? Write those down. The third step is knowing how you think. All right, how do you think? How do you think about food? How do you think about your body? I kind of talked a little bit about that within step 1. Got a little ahead of myself there. But how do you think? How do you think about weight loss? How do you think about that journey? How do you think about eating healthy? How do you think about maintaining your ideal weight? What are the thoughts that come to your mind? That's really important. Step 4, what are your thought processes? So do you get stuck in ruts really easily? Do you get stuck in thoughts really easily? How are you processing through things? Step number 5 are what are your views about how the world works? Now, I'm not talking about politics. I'm not talking about the economy. I'm not talking about anything like that. Your views about how the world works in relation to you. Einstein said the most important decision we'll ever make is whether we live in a friendly universe or a hostile one. And for many, many years, I felt like I lived in a hostile one. And you approach life very differently when you view the world as hostile or the universe as hostile and uncaring and stacked against you versus it's friendly to your wants, it's friendly to your desires, it conspires to support you and help you. It wants you to be happy and joyful. So look at what are your views of how the world works in relation to you. And number 6 in shifting your identity is being willing to learn new skills. And being really honest, are you willing? Now, when I reached the point where I was like, okay, this is beyond ridiculous now, like something needs to give, I was willing to learn a new skill. So I was willing to do whatever was required to get the weight off. However, something that was different this time from all of the hundreds of other times that I had done it was the experience that I required to have as I was going on my weight journey. Because I was tired of struggling through it. I was tired of metaphorically duct taping my mouth shut every time, or figuratively rather than metaphorically, but figuratively duct taping my mouth shut anytime we would go to the grocery store. I would literally clamp my lips. I would look at things. I'm like, no, I can't have that. No, I can't have that. So I would just have to grind and pound and denial. And I felt like I was hanging off this cliff and is the awfulness over? I wasn't available to experience that anymore. I wanted it to be filled with ease. I wanted it to be fast. I wanted it to be simple. I wanted to enjoy the journey. I wanted it easy, ladies. I wanted it to be easy. So I was like, you know what? If I have to go through this, because isn't the idea of 40 pounds so arduous? Or 50 pounds? It's like, I'm never going to get there. That is huge. That's a young child. Holy cow. And then, and when we have more than that, anything more than 4 pounds just feels so big to me, or at least it did at the time. And so I got really, really clear on the experience that I required through this journey. I didn't want it to take forever, and I wanted to enjoy it. I wanted it to be fun. I wanted it to be filled with yeses rather than all this deprivation that I was skilled at. All right. So I invite you to do that as well. If I got to get up and I got to move my body more, and certainly I need to eat less and I need to eat different and I need to drink more water, and I get all of those tactical things, but I want this to be fun and easy and joyful, and that's what I required. So I invite you to do that too. Set the parameters of the experience that you require to have as you're releasing weight. I realized that I had to change who I was identifying with and the habits that I was identifying with. So at the time, I was identifying with an unhealthy person. I was identifying with somebody who was overweight, who felt defeated more often than not, who stress ate, who emotionally ate, who ate to escape life. I was in escape mode all the time because everything was so scary to me and I was just filled with fear all the time. And so I would use a number of different things to escape my life. So definitely I would escape through food. I would escape through weekends. I couldn't wait until the weekend came because then I could escape my life. I would use vacations to escape my life. I would use sleep to escape my life because I was in so much fear. And so I just pull away from that and start asking, well, am I escaping or am I enhancing? Am I going to use this to escape my life or to enhance my life? That was a really, really powerful question that I started asking myself to help me start identifying with a different kind of person. I wanted to identify with a healthy, confident, slim, trim, fit, attractive woman. Like, that's who I wanted to identify with. So I had to just get my bearings on, all right, well, how does she think? And how does she eat? And what does she eat? And how often does she eat? And how often does she work out? And does she allow herself to have sugar occasionally? The answer to that question is yes. And does she feel guilty when she eats sugar? The answer to that is no. But does she 90% of the time eat healthy because she loves it and is fueled by that? Yeah. So I just started getting really, really particular about who I was identifying with and who I was identifying as. I got this from my personal trainer. Shout out to you, Chris. Like, props to you, man. He said he has been all about fitness since he was young. So when he was 14, he decided that he wanted to be more healthy. He wanted to be more active. He wanted to eat well. And he's like, so I just decided, like, I should probably start doing what healthy people do. And he just kind of tossed that comment out during one of our sessions. And I was like, I love that. Yeah. Well, I should probably do what they do. I should probably eat what they eat and think what they think, more importantly than anything else. And it was, I get to stop identifying with somebody who has unhealthy habits and start identifying with somebody who has healthy habits. I mean, it's very, very simple and yet profound because most of us don't do this. And here's the thing about weight loss or anything else. It's not this external thing that's sometimes there and it's sometimes not, and sometimes it behaves and sometimes it doesn't. Like our bodies really aren't that way, even though it feels like it. It feels like it's so much out of our control. It really isn't. It's an internal thing. It's an inside job. We have to change the inside first if we want to be able to sustain any change on the outside. So you got to focus on the right things. All results stem from the inside. Every single one of them. That's where they start, is from the inside. So I have this personal trainer. And we're working out, and I had made a comment to him. And I mean, ladies, I have no problem being transparent. Like, there was a lot of vanity that was involved with his weight loss journey. Like, I can talk about health and I can talk about lifestyle. And yes, that's important. And it was very important to me to identify with a healthy woman. But I wanted a smoking hot bod again. All right. I wanted to look good. I wanted to feel sexy and beautiful and like, well, I wouldn't say traffic stopping, but I wanted to be stunning. Like, I want to be confident in front of other people, right? And just like hold my own. I wanted to be magnetic. And not that I wanted men to hit on me. I didn't. I wasn't interested in that at all. I have a very fantastic marriage. Mwah, love you, Jeremy. But I wanted to feel beautiful all the time. And I remember talking to Chris at the gym one time, and I said, Chris, I want a smoking hot bod. So I don't know if I need to spend more time at the gym, but like if I just need to pound it more. And he said, if you want to have those toned muscles and a flat belly and like all of that cut, then you need to stop focusing on the output and you need to focus more on the input, because it's all about what you're fueling in your body. It's about what you're putting in your body. It's not the output. Oh yeah, because everything results from the inside. What am I using to fuel my body? How am I feeling when I'm eating? What are the thoughts that I have? It's always an inside job. So I was, I wouldn't say schooled. I was just reminded, we got to go internal. We got to go internal. And another thing about going internal is it doesn't just stay internal. As we're shifting our identity, our habits and our behaviors naturally shift as well, because they reflect what our inner thoughts and our beliefs are. And so I heard it said once that you can't learn how to ride a bike by reading a book. And that's true. It's true for any kind of lasting change. Information does not cause transformation. Implementation of that information leads to transformation. So you know all about me, like I'm all about the how, all right? So how do we close that gap between knowing and having? Knowing that we need to eat right, we need to exercise more, and then actually experience that and having that as our reality. So how are we going to shift? First, you got to go internal. Surprise, surprise, right? Pay attention to you, the chatter in your mind, the thoughts, the beliefs that you're running. The beliefs that you think are true about yourself. What is the inner dialogue that's going on all the time inside your mind? Make sure that those thoughts about your body, about your life, about your weight release journey, about maintaining your ideal size and shape and weight are thoughts that serve you and thoughts that will actually lead you to where you want to go. Remember, are you in a friendly universe or a hostile universe? And by the way, don't judge any of these thoughts, just observe them. All right, we got to know what we're working with. The second thing to do is to look at your habits, because everything you create is a result of your habits. So you get to ask yourself some really pointed questions. Are the habits that I am creating going to lead me to what I want? Are they helping me escape my life, or are these habits actually enhancing my life? When I started shifting in my identity, I knew who I was identifying with, somebody who was defeated, somebody who felt intimidated, somebody who didn't feel authentic, somebody who felt like she was out of integrity. I didn't have very much confidence in myself. I was identifying with that, like beaten before I even started. I lost before I could even try to play the game to win, right? And so as I started to shift, I was like, well, who would I want to identify with? Oh, I want to identify with a woman who is confident in her skin, who feels beautiful, who wears clothes that are flattering to her figure, who is welcoming, who is friendly, that people like to be around because they just really love how they feel when they're around her, and somebody who can be admired because of the way that she thinks and the way that she creates and all of that. Somebody's magnetic and attractive. I was like, I'd rather think like her. Like, I want to do what that woman does because she gets the results she wants. She has life by the tail, and she insists that life meet her on her terms rather than life demanding things of her that she doesn't feel capable of, that she can actually meet. Like, that's who I want to be. And so I started practicing being that woman. And so I started making different choices. I increased the amount of water that I drank every day. I was eating more salads and lean meats and no sugar for a long time, or very little amounts of sugar, because I realized that sugar was not going to lead me to where I wanted to go in my weight. And so it wasn't a forever time that I was going to say no to sugar. It was just for a temporary time while I, got my stuff together in my body and changed my metabolism and all of that. But I started making these different decisions that I eat healthy and I have a toned body and a flat belly and I weigh 125 pounds. And I just started repeating that over and over and over again. And so then I would ask questions. Okay, well, if I'm that person, then how do I eat? And how much sleep do I get? And how do I move? And do I exercise? And, this, that, and the other. And it was really interesting because there were times when those old habits would come up and they would just like to sucker punch me, right? And they'd be like, we need brownies and ice cream stat. But because I had been thinking these different thoughts about my weight and eating healthy, and I love to eat healthy, and this is fun, and this is easy, and the weight melts off of me, I was immediately able to counter that impulse with, but that's not what healthy people do, and I'm a healthy person. Now, I started this when I was 45 pounds overweight. I didn't wait to claim being healthy when I was healthy. I started from where I was and just started claiming it. And it was so fascinating because occasionally those impulses and those urges would come about wanting peanut M&Ms or, wanting to just mindlessly eat until I made myself sick. But those urges got less and less intense and farther between. It was delightful. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And it was all because I was shifting my identity as I went. A great question to ask yourself is, am I using this to escape my life or to enhance it? There have been times when I have eaten dessert that has 100% enhanced my life. And there are times when I have eaten dessert and I've used it to escape my life, and it's a completely different experience. So if you're using something to escape, I invite you to set it down and choose something that's going to enhance. You'll have a completely different experience and a completely different result. Asking these really simple questions is really going to shift your entire perspective. It's going to shift your identity. It's going to give you a completely different approach to this prosperity experience and this whole journey that you have as you are releasing that weight. Some other questions that are really important to ask are, what do you do when you say you're going to do something? Do you actually do it? Do you keep promises to yourself as often as you keep promises to others? What do your habits look like day to day? And then you can just observe those habits and then ask some really pointed, but just observational kinds of questions. Are these habits that I want to keep because they're healthy habits? Are there habits that need to be tweaked? Like we need to tighten this habit up a little bit more. Are there habits that need to be completely tossed and new, healthier habits put in its place? And as you identify more and more with a healthy woman and how she thinks, how she processes, what she believes, it's gonna be easier and easier to find those answers and then to implement those new habits and to make those changes just a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. And that's one of the ways that you really, really enjoy the whole journey as you go. It's profound. Another question to ask yourself is this thing right here going to lead me to where I want to be? Is this going to lead me to my results that I'm after? Most fascinating experience I had about 1.5 years ago. I had released the weight. I was feeling really great. And it struck me one day, donuts and cookies and chocolates and sugar and really fatty, high sugary foods are never going to support me in being thin. For years, I was so offended and insulted that I couldn't eat all the crap I wanted and have the smoking hot bod that I wanted. And rather than think something different and make different choices, I just got offended all the time and ate more of that crap. And I mean, you're probably thinking, well, duh, Allyson, but it really was a moment of epiphany for me. Those don't support the result in the experience that I want to have in my body and in my life. But salad and lean meat and plenty of water and vegetables and fruits, like those are not only are delicious and fuel me so well, but those support the lifestyle that I want to have. They help me think more clearly. It's just amazing. I remember somebody once saying, they had lost all this weight and they were like, I can eat whatever I want and still maintain my ideal weight. And so I was like, well, how do you do that? Because I want to eat whatever I want. But then I realized, after I had made that shift in my identity, I didn't want all of those fatty foods that gave me heartburn and that just made me feel bloated and just gave me brain fog and all of that. I didn't want them. I could eat whatever I wanted and maintain a healthy weight, but what I wanted had changed because I had changed. Now, again, that doesn't mean that I never overeat. I've done that, but I do that very rarely because I don't like how I feel afterwards. And it doesn't help me identify with a really healthy woman. I still eat sugar from time to time, but smaller amounts and farther spaces between because I don't want it. I don't need it. And so it's just all of these things that are just common sense, they hit you in a different way and they anchor in more deeply. And it's oh yeah. And it's because you are now that version of you that really gets it on a deeper level. It's so much fun, my dear prosperity seeker. It is so much fun. The journey gets to be expansive. It gets to be joyful. It gets to be fun. It gets to be easy. The whole experience with your weight gets to be a profoundly spiritual experience if that's what you want it to be. It doesn't have to be grueling. It doesn't have to be unbearable. It doesn't have to be, filled with anger and hunger and frustration and all of that. And is there some hunger at the beginning? Yeah. As you're making those shifts, your body's like, what is going on? But it's nothing that is unmanageable or unbearable. Because now you're identifying with somebody who is powerful and who gets the results that she's after on her terms and in her way. Nutrition is directly linked to intuition. And the more you dial in on your nutrition and the input, the closer you get to God, the clearer everything else becomes, the more you trust yourself, the process, the journey, they're all intertwined. It's such a beautiful experience. Simple shifts in identity. Start where you're at and just make those tiny little tweaks as you go. If you have liked this conversation and if you want to stay in this conversation, then let's do it. Come join me in my Facebook group. It's called The Prosperity Experience. So just do a search for that. on Facebook, and let's continue this conversation. Let's go deeper into this conversation. Let me know what you're up to. Let me know what gaps you have found, and let's see if together we can close those gaps. Totally free. I'm in there every week doing more prosperity tips every Wednesday so that you can use the tools and the strategies and the tactics to support you as you're shifting your identity and shifting who you are and how you're showing up in the world to redesign every part of your reality quickly, easily, and with joy along the way. So come on over there and join me in the prosperity experience. And let's play there some more. Thanks so much for being with me. I hope this was helpful for you today, and we'll see you next time on The Prosperity Approach.